Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to my podcast. This is Louis A. Papp with Mudjod Investments. Again, that's as I say on every episode, Mudjod, not Magyar Investments. It's one of the drawbacks to naming your company something that's not easy to pronounce. I found out the hard way that when you have AI create video or audio, oh boy, I get some really amazing pronunciations of I can tell you that AI might be great, but it doesn't know how to pronounce Mudjod. I can tell you that. Um, I have as my guest today a business partner and a friend, someone who I developed a friendship with as business partner, John. I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to try Maczyinsky.
That was perfect. And
Was it
I,
really?
no, it's continuing with the theme of difficult to pronounce words here. Thank you for
Okay. Well, hey, I couldn't tell. I didn't remember whether it was Maczyinsky or Maczynski, but Maczyinsky it is. So, and as always, I like to let my guests introduce themselves. So, John, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, Lewis, it's great being on your podcast. This is my first time here. And like you say, I've over the past couple of years had the opportunity to be able to get to know you better and what you're doing here. And I've found you to be somebody, it's a quality relationship here that clearly knows what you're doing overall. So I am thrilled that you've entered into the AI space, and are helping people to be able to navigate their way through this. There's certainly a whole lot to talk about, and it seems to change every day.
That's the
But as a
truth.
quick introduction here on my side, I am CEO of Synergy BPO, Synergy with a C, and then we've also got another sister brand named Python Global. Basically, what we do is sourcing advisory work within the BPO sector. So I've been in the BPO space for around 40 years now, a little over 40, and BPO, for those that don't know, business process outsourcing, which basically is anything that you would use a partner for purposes of customer interactions, so customer support or sales or collections or anything else. And then also various back office processes then too. So whether that's medical coding or claims or data processing or just any of those kinds of things. So I've been doing this for a long, long time, 40 years.
Wow.
And what we do is we help companies then to try to be able to figure out then what they should be doing. So who they should be using, where they could potentially be doing the work. And as you can imagine, these days a lot of that work is being done, somewhere else. So
Sure.
whether the work to be done in the U.S. or whether you want it to be done someplace close like Mexico or Costa Rica or Dominican Republic or wherever else, or the more traditional faraway places like the Philippines, India.
India, right?
Now it's South Africa, Morocco, Egypt, and all sorts of other places you probably wouldn't even think of. But we work with clients to be able to do that. Suppliers pay our fees, so for clients, there's no additional cost here for doing any of this. But what I found just in doing this for 40 years is that you've got companies that could do a Google search to go try to figure out who should I be talking to try to be able to do this, or
Hmm.
for somebody who's been around, as long as I have doing this, you kind of pick up a few things along the way and you help companies be able to figure out not only, where to go, but, the questions you should be asking. And more, I've got to say, all of those conversations all have some AI component to them here
Sure.
now as well.
Now, when
So
you say now when you say where to go and what to do, can you be more specific so the viewers understand? So, what would give me an example of a client of yours that reached out to you? What is it you did for them? What were they looking for, and what is it you did for them?
yeah, as an example, for instance, I've got a fintech client, a financial services technology client, who had launched, a couple of years ago with their own brand, and they knew that they wanted to take advantage of some lower cost resources. What they ended up doing is hiring their own people and managing their own people in Pakistan, and had discovered that that was a little bit harder than what they anticipated, trying to be able to
Yeah, I
manage
bet.
from halfway around the world. And that's not really their core competency. So they knew they needed people to be able to do those things, but they just did something that they could do fairly cheaply and quickly, and just launch the thing. And now they're realizing they need a certain level of maturity in terms of how to go about doing this. So they've now grown to where there's scale. They can have a certain level of maturity in terms of their expectation on what they should be doing. And so had approached me about being able to go find the right companies that do exactly this kind of thing that support their industry, in this case, fintech.
Hmm.
And where in the world should that probably be done? So we're looking at places like the Philippines, where you've got just a huge market of people here right now that are doing exactly this kind of stuff. It's
Right.
very equipped. It's got a lot of business continuity built into it. You're not the first in. There's a lot of things that you could be doing there that actually would enhance your business, not just try to get things done more cheaply.
And for those of you, obviously, as you're watching, you see I have John's website up there. So there it is, synergyppo.com. That is what I typed in. I don't know why I don't see it in the URL, but that is what it is. Anyway, so how often, John, does it happen where someone comes to you and they seem determined to work domestically? They say, no, I want to keep. And those of you watching, just so you know, typically with all my guests, I have a pre-podcast appointment. So I have an appointment. I talk with them. We talk about, well, John and I have known each other long enough that I didn't do that. So every question I ask him, he has no idea what I'm about to ask him, just to be clear. So, but how does it ever happen where someone comes to you and says, look, I need your assistance with these. This is obvious. It's not our wheelhouse, which is what every good company should do. You should use people for the expertise in which they are experts. If you are not an expert in outsourcing or finding relevant resources to do your job, then find someone who does that. Because again, you should never, ever waste your time doing something that someone else is better at than you. And I think I know for a fact that's one of the biggest problems of small and medium sized businesses is that people try and undertake tasks, think I'll do this myself. I don't want to. Why? It's not what you do. You know what I mean? A perfect example is what John just gave us. But John, does anyone ever come to you and say, look, I want all my people to be domestic. In other words, I don't want to work outside the US. I don't want to work in the US. And then you show them the numbers and they go, oh yeah, never mind. Does that ever happen?
That's exactly right. That is the challenge here. I mean, so the pro of having all this stuff happen in the U.S., is that one, you're hiring Americans. Who doesn't want to do
Yep.
that? I mean,
Everybody, we all want to do that. Absolutely.
great advantage to that. They also understand the culture, understand your customers. There's not a whole lot of translation you need to do there.
No
There's a lot.
language barrier. Absolutely.
Just the cost of doing that is just something you just need to be able to go in and do with your eyes open. Now, what I will say, and tying a few of the components that I think we're going to be talking about together here, is that one of the things that is happening here right now is that you have some potential legislation that could be taking place here right now, as you've got some people that are focused on trying to be able to bring call center jobs into the U.S. and back into, which is great. I don't think anybody really, again, fundamentally has any problem with that. It is just going to create some economic realities that folks are going to need to have to contend with. So as part of that, there are some of those recent discussions that are taking place here now too, where you've got contingencies where I'm working with clients to be able to solve for what their reality is here today, but then also partner with those same organizations that may also be able to provide a domestic U.S. solution. So if things do change and it's legislated into effect, that they can still solve for that when the time comes. Now, the good news for that then too is that with the advent of the various AI solutions that are out there here right now as well, there's some ways that you can mitigate those costs. So it's really not going to be fundamentally all that more expensive if you properly incorporate AI into the solution to be able to have these transactions taking place within the US supported by AI for maybe about the same cost as what you might be doing today offshore somewhere.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into. So those of you watching, that this is what I do. I integrate AI into any organization. The idea is, as I always say, if I'm meeting with a prospective client, my goal, if you are in any sort of sales environment, which 99% of people I deal with are, you should be selling. That's what you should be doing. Every other administrative task is certainly any repetitive tasks. you want eliminated. Your time is valuable. Right? I mean, if you've been in sales for more than a day or in the business world, how many times have you heard some expression to this effect, right? That your time is limited. The time is the one commodity that is the most valuable, 168 hours in a week. How you divide that is how you're successful. That's it. That's all it comes down to. And if you are in an environment where, let's say John's situation, where his goal, like anybody in his situation, is to acquire new clients. Therefore, if you take it to the extreme end of the spectrum, ideally, the only thing he would be doing is spending his day signing agreements or acquiring new clients. Every other type of administrative task should be eliminated. Now, it's not realistic to exclude 100% of the tasks but you can get pretty close. I work with, and I use this example on every one of my shows. There is a commercial real estate company based out of Colorado, and I helped them started working with them about a year ago. And initially, they were a little averse to incorporating AI. We don't know how much we want to do this. As of today, they operate $40 million worth of commercial real estate with 3 people. 3 people on their entire team. You wouldn't know that by looking at their website, and you wouldn't know that by working with them, because every single thing is handled as if they had a team doing it. And that's, now they didn't eliminate people. And that's another thing I want to talk to you about, that people have this big fear that AI is, people are going to lose their jobs. Okay. Now, my experience has been so far that I have not worked with an organization that eliminated jobs because of this. That hasn't happened yet. I have worked, I will say, with companies, and almost every one of them, where future hiring has been limited. Like, they don't need people at certain positions. But my experience has been that people aren't necessarily losing their jobs. Speak on that a little bit. What do you see in that area? And do people have a legitimate concern about people being put out of work because of AI?
Well, let me talk about my space, specifically here about this, because I've been doing this for so long here that I've seen actually various waves of this way before AI, where technology was going to do exactly that. So, when I started out, again, it was stringing tin cans as compared to what the technology is like here today.
Might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but okay. All right. We like it.
Yeah, Alexander Graham Bell and I are just
right, exactly. I could just see John etching something into the cave on the stone, just like, no, I got this figured out.
Well, I can tell you, I actually remember back in the days when, again, everything was done via phone call. And then you had this great new technology that came out at the time, which was an IVR.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember that at the very beginning of this, what that meant was that, wait a minute, you mean I could have somebody press 1 if they need me to do this, and press 2 if they need me to do that?
Yeah.
Is anybody ever going to have to talk to anybody?
Right.
Ever?
Right.
You could just automate all the phone calls. You can give them enough options here, and you can take care of everything. And clearly that didn't happen. And how many times where people did that the wrong way, or you get stuck within an IVR and you can
phone
never
jail.
talk to anybody. It's a terrible experience.
It is.
So if you use it the right way, what it'll do is it'll cut off maybe 30% of the contacts, that you might otherwise be having to talk to somebody for. But if all you're trying to do is to find your account balance, if all you're trying to do is to be able to do something you can self-serve on, perfect, but it's going to be the rest of those that are going to need to go to somebody. And then the next wave of that, frankly, happened when you then had other channels that you can now start to interact in. So, for instance, things like chat. So now you've got chat. Now chatbots became the big thing. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Now I can use a chatbot and I can automate that whole thing. Then that means, again, why do I ever have to ever talk to anybody ever again? And why do I ever need a human to be able to do anything? And again, there are some good chatbots and there are some not so good chatbots. And now with the advent of AI, they're better and better all the time. But with the initially when this had happened then, and everybody tried to drive everything to chat and everything became automated, in that situation, how many times did you type in something, I'm having a technical support issue, and they just didn't get it, and you got stuck in a loop, and nothing ended up happening? It became very frustrating.
Especially when it ends, especially, not to cut you off, I don't want you to forget what you're about to say, but especially when you're in that loop and it keeps ending with, is there anything else I can help you with today? And I'm like, you haven't helped me with the first thing yet. What do you mean? Is there anything else? We still haven't, my settings, I still, whatever it is, you know what I mean? And anyone who's done any advertising on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, yeah, have fun trying to speak to a human being with Facebook. It doesn't exist. Yeah, as far as I know, it doesn't exist. I know there are humans that work there. I don't know how you reach them, but but their chatbots are extremely advanced, and they've always solved my issues. I've never had an issue on Facebook that wasn't. I don't want to speak bad about Facebook because I do a lot of advertising on there, so I don't want them to. I don't want like Zuckerberg like shutting me down. But anyway, yeah, I always find that entertaining when you're done and you're still in the middle of this very frustrating situation, but each message concludes with, "Is there anything else I can help you with?" But go ahead, continue. But this is a really good point that you're making. Go ahead.
No, you're exactly right. And so again, if you're trying to use technology in the right way, you're usually trying to do one of two things. One is eliminate cost, make yourself more efficient, just be better that way, or just create a better overall experience. And in many respects, I'm in the business of creating a better overall experience just through the nature of what we do through BPO and customer engagement activities and those kinds of things. So it's usually some combination of those two. So if you adopt this in the right way, there are so many ways that you can use AI to create a better overall agentic experience versus just trying to eliminate your workforce. And if that's your objective, is to just eliminate costs through eliminating your workforce, I think you're already starting off on the wrong path. Because
Amen.
what will happen then is that just through this process, you will find those inherent efficiencies in what you're doing that's going to dramatically reduce the overall cost of your operation.
Absolutely, absolutely, and if you the biggest problem, we live in a society where, I'm about to get my soapbox here for a minute, but it'll only be for a minute. But we live in a society where we live in extremes. We live in one end of the spectrum or the other. And if you want, and all my viewers know, I am not political, not a Republican, not a Democrat. Doesn't mean I don't follow what's going on, and doesn't mean I don't have an opinion, but I don't have a side. So, but that being said, I use politics as a perfect example. Long gone are the days where people have civil discussions and people can say things like, "Oh, let's agree to disagree," or "I see some good points." Right, right. When you talk politics now, it's people will tell you whether they like your piece of legislation or your idea before they hear it, right? Once they know what side you're on, "Oh, I don't want to hear it. That's going to be bad because you're on left or right." "Well, I haven't even told you what it is yet." "Yeah, but you're one of them." So where am I going with this? Well, it's the same principle with incorporating AI. It's not as though it has to be, I run everything with pencil and paper and I run out of a brick and mortar establishment, and I use the Pony Express to deliver my mail, or I have one person running an entire operation. I've fired everybody, and there are happy mediums. The goal is just to be more efficient. And John, I wrote down what he said: better overall experience. Okay, if that's your goal, and I'm glad you said that. I would have never worded it that way before, but it's such a perfect appraisal of what it is. If your goal is, let me create a better experience for my customer, you're going to use AI correctly,
Exactly
right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you use, and it's going to behoove everybody that works for you. Because if you're using it correctly, that means you have happier customers. Just reverse engineer the whole thing. I have happier customers. That means I have more loyal customers, which means I'm doing better financially, which means I can take care of my people who work for me better. It all works great. Um, Let me ask you this: where do you see? What about data? Let's talk about that for a second. This is a big concern. Obviously, there's a concern with, I can make a video. I could take a video of you and make a video of you breaking into a liquor store, right? I mean, we all know that can happen.
Right.
Where do you see legislation possibly working in this direction? Do you see the government trying to legislate AI in this way? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think we're already starting to see all sorts of that happening then as well in terms of Anthropic and some of the other things that are happening there today, as far as what it can be used for, limitations as to who to use it, and those kinds of things. So definitely, and I would say that, if you didn't legislate it, then, you think about, your customer service environment and whatnot here. I mean, you would have Taylor Swift and George Clooney's voices being used to be your customer service agents, if that's the case here for any of.
I saw one. I don't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but don't forget what you're about to say. And I always say that to my guests. But when I hear a good idea, I saw an ad for. It was one of those ads on YouTube. I do the death scrolling. I do. I'm a sucker for a good construction fail video. I love those. Where the guys, he's just swinging a hammer, and some guy's holding a block like this, and it's like, what could possibly go wrong? And he smacks him in the head. Anyway, and I saw what popped up was a commercial for some sort of erectile dysfunction, something, and it was Joe Rogan. And I know it wasn't really him, but I mean, it was him talking, and it had that AI sounding voice. Hello, you know what I do when I do this. How you can tell right away. And I'm like, how do they get away with that? Like, how do they? I don't understand. How are they not sued into oblivion for that? Have you seen things like that?
Yeah, well, certainly you see some small-time players and whatnot getting away with that on social media and whatnot here.
It's terrible.
Yeah, and every time that happens, it just creates more impetus, I think, to try to regulate this
Of
stuff.
course. And it's so interesting. It's always, I'm going to sound like Dr. Jordan Peterson here. And I don't, for those of you watching, if you don't like him, I don't care. I think Dr. Jordan Peterson is a brilliant man. And he's one of the few people in the world whose books I've quoted. And the 12 Rules of Life and Antidote to Chaos. I don't care if you don't like him. You don't like. If you don't like him, you don't want to watch my podcast anymore. Knock yourself out. But and he always talks about how the differences in men and women and the tail ends of the extremes. And I'm using his logic here. You take the tail end of the extreme of use of AI, right, manipulatively, and it's those people who are going to end up driving legislation, and yet they are the vast minority of people who are doing it. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And again, the challenge is going to be is making sure that the people that have the power to be able to make those decisions have the good intentions, to be able to regulate things in the right way. I mean, that's the big overall thing. But within our space, again, there's the ways you could use it for bad outcomes or for bad intent. But there are definitely going to be all sorts of things that when you think about AI, you may not even think about. Let's
Like
think
what?
about a BPO process standpoint. So let's just
Okay.
think typical, let's say a customer service type of setting. For whatever reason, people will be calling you to try to do something because they need something done. And so how do you use AI in this kind of an environment? And a lot of this stuff happens behind the scenes in ways you may not even think about. I mean, so this is a people environment inherently.
Mm-hmm.
Person talking to a person, interacting with a person, connecting with a person, making the person feel better about your company and resolving their problem in the process. And to the extent that AI can do that, and replace that entire interaction, then fantastic. But there are other things you can do behind the scenes as well. So think about like the recruiting of that individual. So if you've got your superstar agent that's out there that just does a fantastic job, and every time a customer talks to them, they do a great overall interaction, and the customer walks away happy, and they're like, I like these guys because of Sally. Sally did a fantastic job. I need more Sallys then. All right. So I want everybody out there to be a Sally. How during that recruiting process can you use AI to try to be able to figure out what is Sally, what makes Sally Sally, and how do I find more Sallys? So from that standpoint, you can use AI for recruiting to be able to staff your team the way that you need. From a training standpoint, then as well, you can use that to be able to figure out how do I get people trained up in the best possible way. So it's not just putting up a bunch of slides up on a screen and making sure that everybody
Right.
memorizes the thing, but it's how do I then use all the information at my disposal to be able to make sure they are as prepared as they can possibly be so that when they take that first call or chat or email or whatever else, that they're doing as good of a job as possible. So AI is being used all through the training process to be able to make
Yep.
that happen.
And I'll tell you right now, if you're still, don't forget what you're about to say, John, but if you're still using slides to train your people, if you're still doing the thing where just read this, boy, you are so antiquated. It is just that is it's there's no way your turnover rate isn't the highest in your industry that it possibly could be. Well, go ahead, continue. I love this theme because this touches on what I do. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are two good examples. And then once you actually get into the process, then where you've got people that are now going to be interacting with your customers, AI is then used all through this to try to be able to anticipate what the customer issues are going to be. So this is what we know about the customer. We know that they probably have a late payment going on here right now. We know that they have other things that are happening in their account that we need to be able to address. So when that customer comes in to the agent already has a head start in understanding what the likelihood is of what their issues are going to be, how they can try to address the situation. They've got maybe the customer history, which has been brought up so that they can understand that as well. They've been late 3 times. There's nothing else we can do. Whatever else the situations are, it helps that experience. It helps that process go faster, more efficiently, gives the agents the tools that they need, arms them to be able to have things happen. But even before then, I've got to tell you, there's some other cool things that have also been happening. So 45%, I think that's the number now, of calls that are taking place in offshore locations right now are being
Hmm.
supported by an AI tool to be able to help soften the accent of the individual that's handling that call.
What do you mean? What do you mean, like the actual literal accent?
On a real-time basis, as that person is now speaking with a customer,
Uh huh.
you've got a technology which isn't eliminating the accent, but
It's
they are
softening it.
more understandable. They're
Wow.
softening it. And you can kind of tell maybe this person isn't from the next town over,
Right.
but it certainly makes that conversation happen a lot better than what it might otherwise.
And look, I don't care. Look, anybody who knows me, watch my show in any way, I'm going to call it like it is. Okay. Now, I know a lot of people say that and then they shy away from certain areas. I don't. I don't care what you say. If you're in the United States and you call, and then you'd hit someone saying, "Welcome, thank you for calling IKEA. How can I help you?" There's a slight disconnect immediately. Now, I'm not saying you're a racist if you think that or whatever. I'm simply saying the basic fact, which is people like to be spoken to in their language. People like to be spoken to in their accent. If you get a guy from, well, let's use Boston, okay, and he wants to pack the can, have it, yad, all right, and he sounds like Ben Affleck, okay, and you get a guy, so we're saying still in the English language, but then you get a guy from Louisiana who's going to talk and he's going to hear you talk like there's a disconnect. It's right away. Now, does that mean the conversation is going to go bad? Nope. Could he still have a wonderful experience? Yep. But the introduction of the experience, right? How do I set the expectation for this experience? And everybody knows, certainly John, you know as well, if not better than anyone, is that you want to start off on the right foot, right? If someone's calling, they might already be upset or irritated or bothered or concerned. The last thing you want to do is introduce an additional variable to augment their irritation, their degree, right? So I didn't even know that existed. That sounds. So I want to be clear and make sure we're saying the same thing. It's not a voice. It's not AI that's speaking. It's a human being that's speaking, but the application is softening this human being's accent. Is that correct?
That's 100% spot on.
Wow.
And your assessment of that too, in terms of that, predisposition you may have at the very beginning of that interaction then too, is exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, it's and you're not a bad person or anything of saying that. Okay, there's a reason that if you have an international company and you have a location in Mexico, okay, you are going to want Mexicans in that location. You're going to want them. I don't care if you look like I happen to speak 4 languages, but if I was down there speaking Spanish, okay, my Spanish is not as good as a Mexican's Spanish. Okay, you want that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a reason people typically look. You go to Los Angeles, you got Chinatown, you got Koreatown, you got Little Italy, you got the Latino section. Why is that? Because people like to be surrounded by people who are, from a cultural perspective, like them. That's what it is. So there's nothing wrong with that. But
Well,
okay,
what I would also say about that, then too, Lewis, just taking it a step further, So, so an accent isn't always a terrible thing, meaning that what happens then is that if you have somebody who's got an accent, but they're helpful,
Mm-hmm.
they understand you, and you get through the process. My Wi-Fi is down. I get through it. They were helpful. They did everything they needed to do, and my Wi-Fi is working again. You know, you may be, well, maybe I would have preferred maybe the person didn't have an accent, but it was a good call. I got what I needed done.
Goal
Everything
was
was good.
accomplished.
But if that doesn't happen, and so
Mm-hmm.
you get to the end of the call and your Wi-Fi is still down,
Mm-hmm.
think it took longer than it should have, or something else happened, then your mind automatically goes,
Yep.
it's because I was talking to somebody who didn't get it.
What a great point. What a great point. You want to know what? Hold on a second. I want to use, can I use it? That was such a good point, John. What a great point. I'm, I'm such an idiot. I've never used these things, but do you guys like the show so far? Does everyone like the show so far? Yeah? Oh. Yes, I am an adult 16-year-old. Yes, absolutely I am. Sorry, just I was like so eager to use it. I'm like a kid on Christmas Day. I'm like, oh look, I have this feature. But so, anyway, that's such a viable point. Okay, and I don't want to take away from the point that and I wouldn't have thought about that until John just said it. Okay, so if everything goes well, and this is typical in life, right? Typical in life that if something goes well, okay, you're willing to be forgiving of variables that you did not anticipate. It doesn't matter what the situation is. If things go well, right? But if things go poorly, you are now looking, you are predisposed to find something that you did not like. And that's a great example. I mean, if you want to, you could take that to the next level. You know what I mean? Look at the problems we have in our society with cops. Right? I mean, a cop does something great. Cop does a good thing, and I want to be clear where I stand on this. I believe that 99% of cops are good cops. They're out there. They're doing a good job. We should support them. Are there bad cops? Of course there are. Just like there's bad everything, right? The difference is most of us don't walk around with body cams on. Most of us don't have dash cams on. You know what I mean? So when they see it, it gets highlighted. But my point is, even in police officers, they do something good. Yeah, you might hear about it, but they do something bad, right? And then we find a reason. Oh, it's because he's or he was, or she, right? And it's the same thing. So that's a really good point. So I think most companies miss that point, right? I mean, would you agree with that?
100%.
What
Yeah.
do you think of how would a company go about addressing that? How do you think is that something? Does that start at the training level, or is that like where if I was an organization and you noticed that? And by the way, do you do this? Let me ask you this. This is an interesting question. I just thought about it. Let's say I come to work for you and I'm say, John, look, I'm in fintech. Let's just use that because you brought it up. And I need. Do you help people find call centers? Is that kind of something you do?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Okay, so I want to find a call center, and you're looking at my organization, and you notice something that is not in your wheelhouse. Okay, something awry in my organization but you don't. But this is not what you hired. I didn't hire you for this. Do you bring that to their attention? Do you work with them on that, or is that like, no, look, that's not my purview, so that's your thing?
Well, I've done enough of that over the years that I think I've got a pretty good eye for being able to have a pretty good soup to nuts assessment of good versus bad, even if it wasn't the original catalyst for us coming together, at the start of the engagement. But what I will say is that if we do have some other opportunities that you may want to increase the scope of the discussion regarding, if I can, I've got a network of people that can. Um, so from that standpoint, if we need to be able to bring in some other consulting engagements, some active management of processes, any of those kinds of things, absolutely we can do that.
Okay, and let me ask you this: do you work? Do you refer people to other organizations for things you don't do? Does that happen, or is that not? Is that not really a scenario that presents itself?
Absolutely. I mean, again, I consider this soup to nuts. In many respects, it's just connecting people. Just making sure that if you have a problem, I can help you. With somebody that probably does this kind of thing. So I'll refer people. There's some limited engagement stuff that we can do. There's different things that we can do to be able to help.
Do you advertise or do you market yourself out there?
So a lot of what we do is online. There's a lot of word of mouth, and when I've been doing it for 40 years, I also just get proactive outreach and referrals that take place then too. But if
Okay.
you're looking for us again, you can find us just like you said, synergybpo.com. You'll probably see us come up as you just do, internet searches on things, and as well, AI loves us online as well. So you'll probably see us, showing up all over there.
There they are again.
Yeah,
So we got a US number, we got a UK number, and we got, what's AU?
Australia.
I didn't know that was abbreviation for Australia. That's okay. So
Yeah.
there it
So
is again.
let me just say again. So for how and when to reach out to us here. So if you've already got a contact center right now or some kind of BPO back office operation, medical coding, data processing, data annotation, there's all sorts of work being done within the AI space. And you're either trying to be able to scale from what you've got right now, do something different because you ought to be doing something different, or if you're just doing this for the first time, then what you do is you reach out to us. We've got we're getting close now to 120 BPO organizations around the world here today, big, small, here, there, some that do this, some that do that. And what we'll do is we'll work with you based on the criteria that you've got in terms of what you're looking for to try to be able to figure out the right company in terms of size and certification and expertise and vertical alignment and all the other stuff that could be there. Come up with a list of companies that should be at the table with you as you're trying to be able to figure this out. Get the proposals in the door and work with you through the process to be able to ask the right questions to try to be able to make the right decision on who to work with.
And I'll tell you all this. Look, John and I met on an investment that we have disagreed before this podcast started to not discuss the name of the investment. But this is how you know the quality of a human being. Okay. We all know the saying that everybody loves a winner, right? Now, I don't know how all of you interpret that. The way I interpret that saying is that people will be your friends when you're doing well. It's easier to be a friend to someone when they're doing well. Okay. And like everyone in this world, I've had my ups, I've had my downs. Okay. And as I think we all know, certainly if you've been around as long as John and I have, you find out the true metal of the character of individuals when everything goes south, right? I mean, it's amazing. I have a separate business venture that I did with these two younger gentlemen, and everything was great when the money was rolling and all that. Then there was a hiccup, and boy, it was embarrassing for me to see the lack of character in this one specific younger gentleman, the moment things went south, and so where I'm going with all this is the business venture that John and I invested in did not do well. I think it's safe to say, John, it's a colossal disaster and failure. I think that'd be safe, right? Yet John and I, when I worked with him, he was still willing to work. He was still willing to put in the work to try and make it work. And the one thing that I noticed about him, which is a variable that I only started to appreciate as I grew older, is reasonableness. How reasonable is an individual? There's a lot of other variables that are important too, but to me, I want to know, like, when you and I speak on a subject or have a common interest, what is your degree of reasonableness? Because if John and I worked with the individual who made the situation a failure was arguably one of the most unreasonable, illogical people I've ever met. I don't know about you, what you would say on that, John. What would you say?
Absolutely agree.
Yeah,
Highly emotional, just wasn't guided by all the right principles to make his decisions.
absolutely. Certainly wasn't qualified. Now, here's the thing, though. If you're not qualified to be in a position to make the right decisions, that's not bad. That's not the worst thing. You just need to know that and then get the right people. That's it. There's no look. I use sports as an analogy all the time. Okay, you take any great baseball, football, basketball manager or coach. Okay, Pat Riley with basketball, Jimmy Johnson with football, Jim Leland with or Joe Torre with the Yankees. They weren't experts at every single step of the game, right? I mean, Pat Riley was at best an above average professional basketball player, right? Jimmy Johnson never played professional football. Okay, I don't know what Joe Torre's experience was in baseball. I don't know if he actually ever played or not. But the point is that they surrounded themselves with people who were good at what they did. So, I said this at the outset of this show, that one of the biggest problems of small and medium-sized businesses is that people try to undertake tasks that they are not qualified to undertake, and which leads me right back to AI, right? Would you agree with that, John?
100%. You're exactly right.
So, if I'm a business, what advice would you give to someone who's on the opposite end of the age spectrum here? Okay, so they're just getting started. They see you. This guy is successful, and John is successful. He's not just one of those people that says he's successful. John is very successful, and if you get a chance to work with him in any capacity, I would encourage you to do so, because one thing about John is what you see is what you get, and he's candid. You never worry about. You'll never have a conversation with John that starts out saying something like, wait a minute, this is not what you said, right? And that those of us in the business world know that we've had too many conversations like that. So you're giving advice, John, to someone who's seen you, they're successful, but they're just starting out. What advice would you give them? What's your just general piece of advice that you would say that you've learned from in your years?
Well, that's
I know it's a loaded question, I know.
well, I'm trying to think of what direction I could go.
So while you're thinking,
well, what I would say is do what you know. All right. So if you've got an opportunity, for instance, like what we're dealing with here right now for AI, and just picking up AI here for a second, I can tell you that you have every company that goes into every conversation here now thinking, I need to be doing this. I need to be doing AI. I don't want to get left behind, and I don't want to be doing this as Lewis had talked about earlier. The Pony Express route. Seeing other people that are head and shoulders above what I'm doing here right now here today. So therefore, I'm going to just jump on this thing. I'm going to grab at AI. I'm going to make sure it's incorporated in what I do, which is great. But you need to really understand this. You need to get educated in terms of what you are doing for purposes of AI. What is the objective? And then how do we get there? If you're doing AI for AI's sake, then you're going to go down the wrong path, and you're going to be probably accomplishing exactly what you're trying to go after, which is ill-defined. So you'll be doing something, but it's probably not going to be the right thing. So what I would suggest is educate yourself as much as possible in terms of what your overall objective is, and then try to figure out how to be able to use AI to be able to get that done.
that's great. That's a great piece of done. No, I ask all my guests this, and this was actually a good answer. Usually I get some kind of fluffy answer. I shouldn't say that. Everyone's given some, let me redact that. You typically don't redact anything. All my guests have given something substantial. This, however, is the best thing. So I like that. If you're doing AI for AI's sake and your goals are ill-defined, so educate yourself on your goals, right? Is that what you said?
Exactly right. Know what you're wanting to get accomplished, and then figure out how you're going to use AI to get that done.
I'm going to use, right. That's great. And here's the thing. If you're not sure, there's a lot of people out there who, and I've said this before, that yes, you know what AI is, but you really don't know what it is exactly. Ask. You're more than welcome to call me, email me, ask. I'm not just going to only, I've helped, there's about 4 or 5 organizations that I've assisted with the implementation of AI, and I didn't do it. Like I didn't, there was no financial payoff for me. I just, because in each case, they were pretty small. They were small, and there's one person specifically, she's a hairstylist. She reached out to me. She's a hairstylist in New York City. She found my website. She called me, and I told her, I said, look, you're not in a position to pay me to incorporate it. And quite frankly, you don't need it. You know what I mean? You don't need to pay me. What you need to do, she's doing it for herself. She doesn't run a whole boutique. It's just her. And I said, it's not like something that you have to be a big organization to use. It's so ask people. But one thing that John touched about, he referenced the Pony Express. And here's something I say all the time. I've said this, I will stand by this, and I'll continue to say. I say it in some of my ads too. One of two things, if you're in the business world, one of two things will happen in the immediate future. I said one of two things, then I said A. I'm stupid. One of two things. One. Okay, so now I'll laugh at myself. Okay, so one of two things will happen in the future. One, you will incorporate AI into your organization and make yourself as competitive as you can be to remain competitive in today's business market. Two, your competition will. One of those two things is going to happen, right? And before we end, I want to touch on, this voice AI system that I've been working on that I've now fully developed. I've just started to implement. So if you're in a situation where if your business is such that you get calls and you get missed calls, okay? People are calling you and you don't get to the phone, okay? What percentage of those missed calls turn into paying clients? It's not a trick question. What percentage of missed calls turn into paying clients? Now, if your answer is, with most people, what would you say, John?
Zero.
Yeah, that's what most people say. They say, I had this one guy, construction, like building contractors are a big source of my business for that. And he's like, how is that even possible? It's a missed call. How can I said, well, if you have a voice AI system, which I do, now that voice AI system, which I have in 17 different languages, offers 100 different human sounding voices, takes that missed call and turns it into a booked appointment and tells them everything about your business. So it's not just like I need an appointment. So if I was calling John's number, this voice AI system would walk through all the details of his business. So if they said to the voice AI agent, hey, well, do you guys operate in Singapore? Okay, well, what if I only have a company of 50 people? Well, what if it would answer all those questions? So now you ask yourself, how much business am I missing? Right? What I always refer to is, and I did a whole podcast on this, the intangible loss of a sale. It's intangible because you never knew you had it, because you never had it. You lost it because you never got it, right? That person that calls you and they hear please leave your name and number. What do they do? It's 2026. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my phone and I'll go to the next person on Google. I'm going to the next person. That's it. Now, if you're in John's industry, now he, I wouldn't say falls into that category just because he has a very niche product, a very niche service, excuse me. But if you don't, if you are a building contractor, if you're a real estate agent, you're a financial advisor, if you're one of an extremely large number of people, I'm not going to wait for you to call me back. I don't have to, right? Get your voice agent, get someone to do it. I think mine is the best there is, but that, of course, I'm going to say that. So, okay, that's pretty much it for our show. John, got any parting shots? And this has been very enjoyable, by the way. I really appreciate you being on, and it's rare that I've had a friendship develop through business. I can't say that's happened too much for me. First of all, I'm not overwhelmingly a likable guy. A lot of people think I'm a dick, so there's that. But I feel like I've developed that with you, and I appreciate that. And so thank you very much for being on my show. And what parting shots do you have, or any winsome words you want to throw out at us?
Well, first off, Lewis, I can't just let that one slide. What I do have to say, though, for those that have gotten to know Lewis through his podcasts, I'm sure you've got some insights into him from having spent some time with him in person. And as he's also mentioned then too, our relationship has also sometimes been trial by fire, and you find out the mettle of an individual. And I can tell you that Lewis may project a gruff exterior potentially, if you first meet him. And I think it's really just Lewis being a nuts and bolts, say it like it is kind of guy. And I absolutely appreciate that. I like that more than anything. But
Thank you.
Once you really get to know and understand Lewis, then as well, you get to see a soft interior.
Well, I appreciate that. What do you guys think about that?
All right, so I guess in terms of parting shots, what I would say is having seen what Lewis is doing here now, as far as his attempts to be able to help out people here through this podcast and be able to enlighten folks through, various people he can bring on the show. And I thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to be able to be here. The other thing I would say is that, the types of things that Lewis is specifically focused on, I think is just hugely important. So I thank you as a public service for what you're trying to put together here, the product that you're doing in terms of your AI-enabled phone systems and the rest of that. I only imagine good things. So thank you very much for introducing that to your audience, and thank you very much for having me on your show.
All right. Well, thank you so much, John. That is Louis Papp and John Maczyinsky, AI, Louis Papp with Mudjot Investments. And, my slogan is AI, your edge for growth. Reach out to me for any questions. And if you want to be a guest on my show, you're more than welcome to reach out as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm signing out. You all have a good day.